The final straw, which compelled me to challenge the government head-on, was discovering that school policies and curriculums had been radically altered to remove almost every child safeguarding standard that we'd had. Primary school children were being subjected to erotic sexual content. Female students no longer had the right to single-sex sports teams, toilets or change rooms. And teachers, like me, were being forced to lie to parents about their children, who were secretly living as one gender at school and another gender at home. I realised then that my teaching career was over because I simply would not ever do the things that I was being asked to do. I would never ask students to tell the class which sexual experiences they'd had and which they were willing to do. I would never tell girls to bind their breasts. I would never accuse gay students of being transphobic. I would never tell my female students that they had to tolerate a male teacher supervising their change rooms. And I was never ever going to lie to parents about what was going on with their own children at school. But I also knew that if I spoke out, I was going to be vilified and that I'd never work in a public school again. And that is exactly what happened. But so be it. I wrote articles, I did interviews, I gave talks all across Victoria. I worked with brave women and men from the left, women like Jasmine, Holly, Stasia and Kat. I worked with LGBT organisations and free speech organisations, with doctors, lawyers, brave journalists like Bernard Lane, and amazing women like Claire Chandler and Kath Deeves. I worked with people of all faiths and none. I worked with betrayed parents and shattered detransitioners. We put everything else aside and we worked together. And every single one of us was attacked for shining a light on these issues. Eventually, I got myself elected as a local government councillor in Melton. Councils are responsible for providing change rooms, toilets and all sorts of domestic violence and women's services. So I asked whether it was legal to provide these single-sex services and facilities anymore because biological males could just identify as women. I asked the council officers. They didn't know. I asked the lawyers. They didn't know. I asked every single local government council in Victoria, and not a single one of them knew either. But almost all of them knew unequivocally that it was transphobic just to ask. I asked the Gender Equality Commissioner and the LGBTQI+ Commissioner, and all that they could tell me was that some men are women, but you aren't allowed to ask which ones are which because that would be discriminatory. And they also told me that I should encourage any women who were unhappy about this, including religious women and victims of sexual assault, to, quote, be more tolerant. I tried to ask the Human Rights Commissioner, but their office told me that I would never, ever, ever get a meeting with them. So I asked the Victorian Government Solicitor's Office, and they handballed my question to the Attorney General of Victoria, who has to this day failed to answer. And so now, here I am. Democracy in Victoria is almost 170 years old, and one of the reasons for its enduring success is that we are blessed with this council, this House of Review. So I'm just going to get right to work by quickly reviewing 3 areas of the law, and I'm going to focus on women and children because that's what the Governor's speech focused on. First of all, sex-based rights. Women and girls are suffering in Victoria because this government cannot or will not define what a female is. And as a result, every woman and every girl in Victoria has lost the right to enjoy female-only sports, female-only change rooms and countless other female-only activities. As a result, what most women would consider to be sexual harassment and indecent exposure is now legal in Victoria. As a result, there is right now at this very moment a twice convicted male rapist housed with the female prisoners in my area in the Dame Phyllis Frost Correctional Facility. They are the most vulnerable women of all. Surely there must be ways to ensure the safety and dignity of trans people which do not trample on the rights of women and girls. And I call upon this government to immediately reinstate sex-based rights in the law. Secondly, Children in brothels. I was very glad to hear that industry called the adult industry, because children don't belong anywhere near it. And yet this government has made it legal to have children inside brothels in Victoria. That's right. In commercial brothels, newborn babies and children up to 18 months of age are allowed on the premises. In home-based brothels, children of any age are allowed inside. Devastated police officer friends of mine have told me that Victoria will now inevitably become the child rape capital of Australia. So again, I call on this government to amend that act as well, so that no child can be taken inside brothels of any kind in Victoria. And thirdly, transgender affirmation practices on minors. This government has made it illegal for parents and clinicians of gender dysphoric children to seek out any treatments at all, no matter how reasonable, if they are designed to naturally alleviate the dysphoric feelings and leave the child's body intact. In Victoria, that is simply not allowed. In Victoria, doctors will lose their medical licences and parents will lose their children unless they affirm and entrench that dysphoria via experimental conversion therapies which try to socially, surgically and hormonally convert boys into an approximation of girls and girls into an approximation of boys. It's been all over the media for at least 5 years. And despite the fact that these interventions have now been proven to be medically unjustifiable, irreversible and devastatingly harmful, ideologues continue to vilify and incite hatred towards anyone sounding the alarm. They even blame these whistleblowers for trans youth suicides, which is the most disgusting and cynical act of political exploitation I have ever seen. The devastated parents, the furious clinicians, and most of all, the heartbroken ex-trans youth whose health has vanished and whose bodies are scarred, deserve justice. And I call on this government to reinstate common sense and compassion and to conduct an open inquiry into gender affirmation practices in Victoria. Thank you.